Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to episode 34 of the Snyder Cut. I am your, exhausted, heartbroken host, Jeff Sneider. But I'm here. I am in action, coming at you from Needham, Massachusetts. I flew back last night on JetBlue, took a cross-country flight. It was cheap getting here, but of course, between the bag fees and there were no Ubers last night at the Boston airport. I had to call, a cab that's twice as expensive. It's ridiculous. But I'm home. I'm with the family. I'm safe. I'm in quarantine for 2 weeks again. And we have got a lot to talk about today, starting with the Snyder Cut. It's real. It's happening, people. Coming to HBO Max sometime in 2021. Jesus. What a saga it has been for Justice League, for these Snyder Cutters. Is there a name for them? Does this movement have some sort of name? God, where to begin? I mean, this all went down during a Man of Steel watch party. That's where they decided to do it. Zack Snyder's a man of the people. He likes to go direct to the audience. The reaction that I saw in the wake of this announcement, I mean, God, I think, Collider, we had 5 or 6 articles on it ourselves. Thankfully, I didn't have to write any of them. Where do you even begin with this? Well, let's start. I want to start with Sean O'Connell, who I think runs Cinema Blend. Good guy, not singling him out here. I saw his tweet. He's writing a book on this, and good for him. But his tweet stood out, and he quoted all these things that we've all heard over the last couple years. It doesn't exist. It's never coming out. It's so terrible, it should never be released. They won't give him the money. My sources tell me. I'd love to respond to these one by one. It doesn't exist. It didn't exist. It doesn't exist right now. It's not real. As of this minute, it's not real. That's why they're giving him $20 to $30 million to go finish it. It's the snowball analogy for me. If I take snow and I roll it into a ball to build a snowman, and I have the first ball, so at the bottom of the snowman, and then I stop, I have a ball of snow. I don't have a movie. I don't have a snowman. I just have a ball of snow. And that's what Zack Snyder had. He just had this ball of footage. It was never releasable, which is why he needed $20 to $30 extra million to go finish it. So it doesn't exist is an accurate thing. It doesn't exist. It was a work in progress, not a work that could be shown to anybody. I mean, $20 to $30 million, that funds 30 Clerks movies or 100 Clerks movies or Blair Witch or, anything. Never, rarely, sometimes, always. HBO Max could have made 6 of those movies for $30 million. It's never coming out, and they won't give him the money and things like that. It was never coming out before there was this thing called HBO Max. It was never coming out before this thing called the coronavirus pandemic, okay? And that's because everything has changed. That's what nobody seems to be taking into account. Viewing habits changed like that overnight. Overnight, the entire ecosphere changed. And now you have so many more people stuck in their homes that we don't know how long it's going to be. They're starting to open things back up. But again, this is going to go in waves. And so if we all, are all stuck in our homes again in September and in October, and then again next spring in April and May or something, whatever it is, there's just so much more demand for streamer content. So when, HBO Max has they don't have anything. They just have Warner Brothers Vault, really. Even the original movies that it has, like Super Intelligence and Steven Soderbergh's Let Them All Talk, these movies should have been ready for next week. Why aren't they? I don't know what HBO Max is doing. Like, you know, half the HBO Max headlines we've read about have been about an unscripted Friends reunion. So they needed something. They needed something to get them eyeballs. And the Snyder Cut movement is definitely fewer people than we think, but it's a very vocal minority. They make a lot of noise. There's a lot of publicity. You know, these are the people who drive clicks online, which is why online covers it as much as it does. Like, all these things go hand in hand. So before, you know, when there was no HBO Max, when there was no streaming service, no, it was never coming out. Warner Brothers would never give him the money to finish this. They would never put it in theaters. But when you have something like HBO Max, a streaming service where you can experiment with all kinds of different stuff, and like a $20 to $30 million investment is a drop in the bucket for them. It's nothing. I mean, they would have wasted that on you know, a series that would have gotten a fraction of the buzz. You know, just look at some of the other series that you know, that Apple Plus is making or whatever. I'm sure they're spending $20, $30 million on those shows, and they have no cultural footprint. So, you know, it makes sense for HBO Max. It's a smart move. But I do love, like, all the executives and the beauty quotes that were in the release. Like, when Zack came to us and pitched us his vision, it's like, what? Like, this guy was getting fired. Like, this movie did not go well. This was go before the suicide, you know, before his daughter committed suicide. Like, things were not going well. He was on his way towards getting fired. Batman vs Superman was terrible. Okay. Like, I like Zack Snyder. I am a big Watchmen fan. I like Dawn of the Dead. Like, I have nothing against the guy at all. I think he's talented. He has his own sort of you know, aesthetic. But yeah, he seems like a really nice guy. So I'm glad that he's going to be given the funds to complete his vision. Do I think that this is a good thing? No. I don't think that if you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation like Warner Brothers or whatever, first of all, you can't have fans making demands. You can't acquiesce to those demands. I mean, you can help it. You can have it, like, help you guide a programming decision. Sure. I mean, that's just listening to your audience. But and I don't want to call the Snyder Cut people bullies. I don't think that they bullied Warner Brothers into it. This is all about dollars, as with everything in Hollywood. Hollywood thinks that they can make a buck off of it, and we're going to get to plenty of that later in the show today. If Hollywood thinks it can turn a profit, of course it's going to do it. And now that HBO Max, you know, now that there's HBO Max, there's a way for it to make a profit. But, you know, every filmmaker who's ever made money for Warner Brothers, or really any studio, they could now go to them and not necessarily demand a director's cut. I'm not saying that Zack Snyder was demanding a director's cut. If the fan demand is there, then maybe. But it's just like, when I pay money to see a movie, like, that's the story. You know, I want to see, these are the decisions that the filmmaker, that the studio, that everybody made. This is the version of the movie. This is the definitive version that was released in theaters. I know that, you know, people are bringing up Ridley Scott and Blade Runner and Kingdom of Heaven, and you know, there are certain tinkerers. There's certain filmmakers who love to tinker. George Lucas has done a lot of tinkering. I feel like even Spielberg does sometimes. Sometimes it's just, these are the guys in position to tinker. They're allowed to, you know, go back. But I think it's opening a weird can of worms when you have, well, you know, there's this version and there's this version and then there's this version. Like, there could be infinite versions and there are infinite cuts. And that's what I love about movies, is that you're seeing everyone's final decisions. So I don't know if I like going back to the work in progress playbook and seeing what could have been. I don't think it's fair to Joss Whedon. I mean, honestly, 20 to 30 million, that's not all. Like, he's going to have to do a lot of, like, reshoots. He's going to have to get the cast back together. If you're Ben Affleck, why are you even agreeing to, like, put the cowl back on? Like, that's not good for you, I don't think. Maybe he feels like he owes it to Zack to help him see his original vision through. And I get why someone like, you know, Gal Gadot, who's Wonder Woman, and Ezra Miller, who's, you know, tentatively still supposed to be the Flash, like, I get why they would want to come back. But if you're Ben Affleck, this is in the past. Like, there's some corporate decision made that we're now going to release this on the streaming service next year, so you have to go back. Like, you fulfilled your contract. I don't know. It's weird to me. And, my sources tell me. Half the people who claim that they have sources don't have sources. And if they do have sources, they have a source. Okay? Like, half the stuff where it's like sources tell me, the sources don't tell you anything, because the source is a document. It's a piece of paper that you've managed to get your hands on, and it can't speak. So, listen, there's a zillion people out there representing themselves as reporters who have sources, but half of them are bullshit, okay? You can't believe everything you read. I thought Drew Taylor, who is Collider's newest hire, congratulations to Drew, always like doing movie talk with him. We brought him on staff, and he wrote a really interesting story about how it sets a dangerous precedent, and I agree with him, although it's a dangerous precedent in a couple of different ways. Which I talked about earlier. I just, listen, I'm going to see this thing. But when you say that, it's ready to be released, they don't even know what it is. Is it a movie or is it a miniseries? They could do it as a 4-hour film, which seems like a lot. Was he planning on making a 4-hour movie? I mean, I guess he was initially, because it was supposed to be 2 movies. It was supposed to be Justice League Part 1 and Justice League Part 2. And then Batman vs. Superman came out, and they're like, oh my God, what the hell are we doing? Let's make this one movie. So now you're telling me that movie is going to be 4 hours, or it's going to be a 6-hour miniseries or something like that? Like, you can't tell me that this was like a defined thing. It was just this ball of mush. It was this ball of snow that they had to mold and build into something, and they needed tens of millions of dollars in order to do that. I mean, I read that Whedon wrote 80 additional pages for his Justice League. So, like, clearly they're 2 very different things. Joss, I feel like, is more like a lighter, like, got to have that quip in there sort of person, and Zack is a little bit darker. And frankly, those are the stories that I gravitate to. Again, I don't think his Watchmen was like a masterpiece or anything, but I really liked it. So, yeah, Zack Snyder, he's hit and miss in my book. He's got Army of the Dead coming up. And it's like, I've spoken to people who worked on Army of the Dead, and he's shown people who worked on that movie the Snyder Cut, the unfinished footage or assemblage of scenes or whatever. So, like, I knew that there was something. I think it all really goes back to your definition of the word cut. Like, is it a cut, or is it just a bunch of scenes that he shot before leaving, And yeah, speaking of Army of the Dead, that'll be an interesting one to see what happens to that. I guess that's coming out in 2021. I thought that was going to be all ready for 2020, but it's not that Netflix needs it. They're the only one pumping stuff out. Is there anything else I want to say about the Snyder Cut? Not really. I mean, I'm not the person. I don't know that everything like the way that so many other people online do. I'm just coming in to, trying to give you like an industry perspective on this thing. Like, it's only because there's a streaming service now. That streaming service needs product. And not only that, but now people are glued to streaming services because they're all stuck in their homes. So everything has changed. Like, in the last few months, everything has changed. Yeah. Maybe we'll come back to that. We'll see. We'll see if there's more time. MGM. MGM's kind of on a roll lately, man. I just read that they were in the bidding for this Real Lord of the Flies project, which sounds super interesting. They didn't end up getting it and landed at New Regency. But MGM, they brought in Michael De Luca a while back, not too long ago. They got rid of Jonathan Glickman, who, I think is a really good producer. He's going to do a good job for them over there, because I think he has some kind of deal with them. But De Luca, I've been fortunate enough to be in this guy's office. Huge respect for De Luca. He was running, New Line in his like late 20s. He was making shit like Boogie Nights and Magnolia. Like, De Luca is a very special executive, and he's got balls. He doesn't just talk. Like, if you give him the opportunity, he will put a slate together, and that's what he's been doing. He got Lady Gaga to do the Gucci movie. He just signed a first look deal with Christine Vachon's Killer Films, and like, listen, killer films, they don't make blockbusters that are going to gross zillions of dollars, but they make good movies. And even if I don't always think that they're good, other people do. Like, you know, those movies are going to be for somebody. You know, I think that they were involved in Zola. And Zola was not for me, but I can recognize, you know, the artistry in Zola and how that might appeal to a lot of people. They got Lord and Miller to direct this Ryan Gosling astronaut movie, and that's a huge coup. I mean, Lord and Miller, they were going to do, you know, the Solo movie. That didn't work out. Now they're going back to space, and they've got Ryan Gosling. And from what I understand, this is a more, it's not necessarily a big, like, dramatic hero saves the world thing. It's a little bit more comedic. And so, you know, Lord and Miller's obviously, they're a great fit for that kind of thing. And I like Ryan Gosling. I think he can be really funny in a sort of droll, deadpan kind of way. What's interesting about this, though, is that Lord and Miller just signed a hugely lucrative first look deal for movies with Universal. And so MGM, so like basically they were like, oh, you know, this project, this Andy Weir book really speaks to us. We'd love to work with Rygos, but we just signed this huge deal with Universal, so we got to make sure it's cool with them if we do this. And so De Luca obviously goes way back with Donna Langley at Universal, and they were able to come to some sort of agreement where she basically loaned Lord and Miller to MGM. And maybe that's because, you know, Universal doesn't have anything lined up ready to go for them right now. I mean, listen, this is a business all about keeping talent happy. So even though it's not necessarily in their best interest, Universal, to let Lord and Miller be making MGM movies, ultimately you want to keep these guys happy. That's half of Hollywood. So you let them go do what they want. I'm just saying, MGM, which was a studio that, you know, at one point was basically left for dead, you know, they really didn't have much going. All it takes is, you know, a strong executive with vision and a board that is willing to support that vision. And so I think it's great that MGM is out there getting in the middle of these bidding wars, you know, elbowing a seat at the table for itself, because it kind of got pushed to like the kiddie table a while back. Yeah, I like it. I like it, De Luca. Keep it up. Michael Bay has set up two new projects. One is a pandemic thriller called Songbird that's going to be shooting in 5 weeks. It's been compared to Cloverfield, to the Paranormal Activity movies. I don't know, you know, if this is going to be presented like those films, like a found footage movie. It sounds interesting enough. I don't know if they're going to have a cast of largely unknowns like Cloverfield did, or if they're going to try to work a movie star into this. I mean, there's a lot of like pandemic type content because that's what you can shoot, and the streets are empty, and like, you know, I get that, but I don't want to see like a year or two full of like Zoom movies. I predicted on another podcast on an earlier episode, like I think this is actually going to be a really beneficial time for Hollywood, and it's going to force people to get, you know, in touch with their inner creative again and use their imaginations. But so there, and there will be those projects, but there's also going to be those that are just like craven, like we got to do something with this right now. You know, let's use what we got and just, you know, toss off something cheap and maybe not all that interesting. So I'm not saying that's what Songbird is. I haven't read the script. I'm not familiar with the filmmakers. Michael Bay, I would say, has a mixed track record as a producer, but hey, it's good for him that he's throwing his weight back into producing, because he can help get movies made. I don't know what he's actually. I don't know. Do we know what he's directing next? I have no idea. Six Underground was horrible. Like, that was atrocious. But it's funny. It's like right now, Bad Boys for Life is the biggest movie of the year. It's the highest grossing film of the year. That movie doesn't exist without Michael Bay. So even though he didn't direct that, he's still got his fingerprints all over it. The other movie that he's doing is this action thriller, Cartel. It's called Armored, and it's set in Mexico's cartel country, and it's basically about this convoy of like UN diplomats being led through this really dangerous area, and of course something happens, and you know they got to sort of duke their way out of it. That sounds a little like Sicario-ish to me. And I love both Sicario movies, even though the second one wasn't nearly as popular. I thought that they were both really good. I actually watched Sicario, the original, a week or two ago, and God, it's so great. It's so great. So, is he going to go make the Hollywood movie, the Hollywood version of that? Or is he looking to do something a little bit grittier with this movie, Armored? I don't love the title. Sounds very generic. It sounds like an old, I guess it was. I think it was an old Screen Gems movie from a decade ago or so. Maybe they came up with something a little bit better for that. Sony also doing a lot of movies in the SPUMC, the Spunko, the Spunk. Jesus Christ. Every time I say that, I'm like, what are you doing, Sony? Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters. So they got S.J. Clarkson to do a female-led Marvel movie. There is some debate about what it actually is. Is it a Madame Web movie? Because Variety's report said that there's no writer attached yet. And I remember last fall, I did a story about Burke Sharpless and Matt Sazama writing the Madame Web movie, which I confirmed. I mean, is it possible? Justin, sort of was hinting that maybe I got things mixed up on that story, but I don't think so. I mean, I definitely had that very well confirmed and airtight. He was sort of wondering if Sazama and Sharpless are doing a Spider-Woman movie, and I have heard rumors of a Spider-Woman movie involving Jessica Drew. Is it possible that those guys have been hired to write that too? I guess. I'm just not sure if like that project that I reported on last fall is one and the same as this Madame Web movie. It's not like Kroll came out and said that S.J. Clarkson is directing a Madame Web movie. There was some wiggle room in there. And now I don't know, who Justin's been talking to or whatever. But let me tell you this, whether it's Madame Web or Spider-Woman, I don't really care. Jackpot, this is another one that got announced this week from with Mark Guggenheim writing the script. I don't care. I don't care about any of these characters. Will I see them? Maybe, if they look okay. Like, I ended up seeing Venom. I probably will go see the sequel. I'll probably end up seeing Morbius. If they got, apparently they're looking at Charlotte, or not looking at them necessarily, but the prototype for casting for this potential Madame Web movie, if that's what it is Amy Adams and Charlize Theron. Now, if they got one of those two, yeah, maybe I'll check it out. But like on the surface, am I interested in a Madame Web, Spider-Woman, Jackpot movies? No, not at all. And I think that Sony is going to learn a harsh lesson down the line eventually. Like Venom is a different case. I knew who Venom was. Venom was introduced in Spider-Man 3. He's a completely different type of character. And they got Tom Hardy. But eventually, some of these comic book movies are going to fail. They're going to flop. There are going to be many, many more Jonah Hexes. And if Sony's not careful, they're going to end up making them because they just don't have, like, Jackpot. What? It's about a mom? I'm more interested in David Robert Mitchell's new superhero movie, Heroes and Villains, which is described as a unique take on superheroes and a genre bender, a genre blender. I'm of mixed opinion on David Robert Mitchell. I liked It Follows. I didn't love it like a lot of people, but it was good. It had style. It was definitely one of the bigger recent, horror hits. Under the Silver Lake was a disaster. That this is part of the MGM thing because MGM got this one. Mike De Luca produced Under the Silver Lake. I should have had this under the whole MGM bit, but put it under the superhero bit. Under the Silver Lake was ambitious, and I liked what he was going for, but it wasn't all there on the page. It felt very much to me like Richard Kelly's Southland Tales, like it's just an ambitious, albeit noble failure. I'm mixed on David Robert Mitchell, but I am more excited to see what he does with a superhero movie than any of these Sony Pictures, JV team. Let's just face it, this is the JV team. You know, they've got Spider-Man. I know there's a zillion other characters connected to Spider-Man. I really think that they should focus their resources on a Sinister Six movie or Kraven the Hunter. Like, those are Kraven is a character that I've never read a Kraven comic or any Spider-Man comic with Kraven in it, really. But at least I'm familiar with Kraven Hunter. I've heard of him over the years. Jackpot, I'm sorry, doesn't do it for me. In other comic book movie news, Ruby Rhodes exiting Batwoman. Whoa, big shakeup on that one. Did we ever find out why? I feel like I have an open Variety tab about why. Why Batwoman left. Let's see. Stem from an ill fit between star and production. According to multiple sources, Rose was unhappy with the long hours required of her as the series lead, which led to friction on set. I mean, that's basically what I said in my story, which is, you know, it's just sort of hypothesizing. Like, the CW shows aren't for everybody. They are long hours, and they are tough shoots. And when you're a little bit younger, you're 17, 18, like most of the leads on CW shows are, maybe you're more gung-ho to be there. Ruby Rose was probably just looking around like, what the hell am I doing here? I don't think that people really necessarily responded to her as the character. I've never seen a single episode. So I'm sure she had some fans. Every actor does, but I think in general, from what I've seen from Ruby Rose on screen, I don't think she's like a great actress. So maybe they wanted to do something a little bit more with that character that was just outside of her range. I don't know if it was fan response or feedback that they were getting, or if the executives felt the same way, where they're just like, listen, this isn't working. Let's just cut our losses. I don't know if if it'll be Katie Keene, I guess, is who she plays on the show, or if it'll be a different character who is Batwoman. I don't care. I never watched the CW. I don't watch any of these shows. What I just thought was interesting, and I know people have thrown it back in my face and said, this is not true, not the reason, whatever. I promise you this is going to be the case for some. So there was her, there was Skeet Ulrich leaving Riverdale, you got Nick Holt pulling out of Mission Impossible. People are talking about scheduling conflicts and all kinds of stuff, and maybe that's true. Maybe on these three cases, like Kroll said, Skeet Ulrich left Riverdale months ago. The pandemic's been going on for months too. I predict, and it's the same way that I sort of said, when movies and TV do come back, there's going to be fewer people on set, and it's going to be shot like a nude scene, essentially. I think I saw a producer use that exact same line this week in a story. I feel like I've been very correct in my this is how the pandemic is going to affect Hollywood and that kind of thing predictions. I think my Nostradamus ball is pretty good. So I really think that you're going to see a lot of people refuse to come back to work, pull out of shows, pull out of films, because there is no reason for them to go back to work. You can see how, network, you've got Lionsgate guy, the head of Lionsgate being like, I'm bullish on audiences returning to theaters. I am pretty convinced that they will, and we're going to plan for it like they are. Yeah, you are in the process, you're in the business of making movies. Of course, you have to be bullish to reassure audiences, it's okay to go back to theaters. Of course, if you're Jeff Wells, you're saying the Oscars must go on. The show has to go on. It's because you are relying on it for your money. If there's no Oscars, then there's no Oscar ads, and Jeff Wells goes broke, and you see him working at a Whole Foods. These people they're invested in these outcomes. But when you're a millionaire, actor, right, and you have really all the money that you could need for a lifetime, obviously everybody wants more money, but maybe there are people who are like, you know what, I'm set, or I can afford to take a year off from the business and wait this pandemic out. Why would they go back to work? Why? If you're Ruby Rose and you're a millionaire, or Nicole, or whoever, and I'm not even saying that this is what happened, but if you are them and you have millions of dollars in the bank, are you in a rush to get to set next Thursday at 6 a.m. To be surrounded by hundreds of people who you don't know if they've been quarantined, Yeah, they've been tested. Let me tell you something about tests. They don't work. None of the testing work. I mean, it's like a 40% success rate or accuracy rate for the tests, for antibody tests, believe me. Stephanie, who I've been living with, she works at a doctor's office, she works at a hospital, she talks to doctors all day long. These things are not reliable, okay? So believe me, the first show that comes back and everybody's tested and everybody tests fine, and then people start to get sick, you watch how that influences. It's going to be like dominoes. Why would these rich celebrities come out of their bunkers, come out of their enclaves in the Hollywood Hills? It makes no sense, particularly if these are big enough stars who they can afford to take off a year and come back once there's vaccines, once they've seen how, you know, Hollywood is doing with this thing. Like, I wouldn't want to be first. Again, if theaters opened up and Tenet was playing tomorrow, I'm not going. I'm going to wait a while and see how it plays out. And I'm telling you, movie stars and TV stars are going to do the exact same thing, whether that was the case here or not. People are not like people who live paycheck to paycheck are in a rush to return to work because they can't pay their bills. But if you're a millionaire, what is the point? There's nothing in it for you. It's just risk. You're not getting paid more to assume that risk. And that's just common sense. That's logic. I don't need to hear that from a source to know that, like, that's how human beings are. So yeah, it's, you know, the Oscars. The Oscars may be delayed. Variety had a story this week, and everybody shit on this story. I picked it up really quickly because if Variety is saying something, you know, then it's probably legit. Having done 2 tours of duty there. But yeah, it went to Mark Malkin broke the story, and Mark Malkin is not a breaking news guy. He is not even a guy like a Chris Tapley or Scott Feinberg who's really plugged into the award season. He's a gossip reporter who became Variety's Oscar guy because he's well liked on red carpets. I like Mark Malkin, and I respect his reporting. Like, you know, I have nothing bad to say about the guy. David Poland went off on him. It was basically just like he's being used. He's shilling, you know, for the Academy essentially, or if not the Academy, you know, sources within the Academy. Just like they put him up to it, that kind of thing. They found a writer who was willing to write the story without asking the questions. I think it's totally possible that the Oscars will be delayed, if only to allow more time for these awards movies to come out, because they can't all come out on top of each other. It's not like everyone's just trying to qualify and get in under the deadline so they can drop 100 movies on December 31st and now they're all qualified and we can give them Oscars. The whole point of releasing a movie is to make money. This is still a business. So it's like you can't have films on top of each other. They have to be spaced out. And obviously, you know, there may not be movies until possibly Thanksgiving. I mean, that's what I'm starting to read and hear, that you know, I forget who it was, if it was Wells or Tapley or somebody, but they sort of said that some, you know, top awards season strategist just hypothesized, like, people will not return to theaters until Thanksgiving. And so if that's the case, then you have essentially the Thanksgiving corridor in December to release all your awards movies. That's not going to fly. So the Academy may have to push back its qualifying deadline from December 31st to end of January, end of February, and the Oscars may not be held until end of March, mid-April. And that's how it used to be. So I actually believe the likely to be delayed line. If it were up to me, I would punt on 2020. If I was a studio, I wouldn't release movies in 2020, because even though theaters may reopen, they're not going to be reopening to the same business that they were before. Again, this is just common sense. I know we're all desperate to get out of the house. We can't wait to get to the theater. But it's like Matt Bellamy tweeted, like, you went from I'm dying to see Tenet to would I die to see Tenet? No movie is going to be worth it, Tenet included, So I would just punt on 2020. And even if you like, because otherwise it's just the Netflix awards. They're the only company releasing stuff. It's them and Vertical Entertainment and Gravitas Ventures and, you know, the VOD distributors. So it's all about, it's like, are the Oscars just to award movies in a given year? And whatever movies come out in that given year, whether it's 400 movies or 20 movies, those are the movies we're rewarding. And, you know, there'll always be an asterisk under this year's movies. Or do you just punt it and say, you know what, we're going to do a ceremony in 2022 celebrating the 2020 and 2021 movies, and they're all going to be competing against each other? Like, why does the Academy restrict itself to a calendar year? You know, what does that really mean in the scheme of things? There's no reason why they can't do a ceremony honoring the 2020 and 2021 movies, which for all we know could be the same number of movies that they would have honored had 2020 gone according to plan. Like, you know, you're trying to choose 10 Best Picture nominees out of 400 movies. It's not like it'll necessarily be out of 800 movies, because movies aren't being made right now. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting with Poland shitting on Mark Malkin's report and Jeff Wells being like, they can't move the Oscars, that would be terrible. But it's like that analysis had nothing to do with the Oscars or the industry or the telecast or anything. It was all about Jeff Wells and his Oscar ad money, really. Yeah, and the same thing goes back to the Lionsgate guy. It's like, you're bullish on people returning to theaters. No shit. What are you supposed to say? You're a cheerleader at that point. Let's talk Tenet. Second trailer came out last night. Caught up with it as soon as I landed. And listen, this movie looks cool. I like the idea that the characters are going one way, and, you know, time in the story or whatever is going the other way. It all sounds very heady and very trippy. And you know what? It does feel, I mean, it sounds wholly unique, but at the same time, very familiar. It looks like a movie made by the guy who did Inception. It looks like it could be Inception 2 or a companion piece to that film. Yeah, like, listen, again, it looks cool. You have to think, you're not shooting the bullet, you're catching it. Whoa, man. I'm stoked for this, but I think that Warner Brothers basically gave itself up. And when it said coming to theaters, when they didn't put July 17th on it, I told you. Even if they were delayed a week or two, I knew this movie was not going to make its original release date. And frankly, what is a week or two even going to do? Why push it there? If you're going to push it. Push it at least a month to the Wonder Woman slot and then push Wonder Woman. I just... Anyways, they debut this thing in Fortnite, which is, you know, where all the kids are hanging out these days. I love how Rob Pattinson is just like blatantly playing Chris Nolan. I love that this guy has to have, you know, some actor playing a version of him. John David Washington, I'm a little nervous. I am a little nervous. I like him. I liked him on Ballers. I don't know if this is a little bit too big for him. Starting to get that vibe. Just starting to get that, like, because Jeff Wells always called him, like, dead-eyed. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's like you hear Denzel, he sounds just like his father, but that gravitas, that charisma, I don't know if it is there. I don't know if that is going to prove to be a fatal casting choice. Yeah. Tenet watch. Da-da-da, I don't know. I don't know when it comes out. I just don't think it comes out July 17th, and I think that Warner Brothers basically acknowledged that in its new trailer. Did we find anything else out? I mean, I don't even think he has. Not David Washington. I don't think he even has a name in this, does he? Or is he just called the protagonist? Is that just what they're calling him? I just think it's cool seeing, like, Martin Donovan, who's one of my favorite character actors in this thing. Blah blah blah. Tenet watch. Okay. broke some news earlier this week that Adam Sandler and LeBron James are teaming up to do Hustle with Jeremiah Zagar. This is something that I've talked about on the podcast before. Sandler has been circling this thing since October. Now, at the time, the NBA was, involved in all this China drama because, Daryl Morey, the GM of the Rockets, sort of, he made some controversial comments from China's point of view about China. And then LeBron came in to sort of take a shit on Daryl and be like, I think he's talking from a place of ignorance and he doesn't really know what he's talking about. And it's like that was weird for LeBron. And I'm convinced that he was just doing it to protect his business interests in China. All along, he knew he was, planning on shooting this movie Hustle in China, which is about an American basketball scout, a little washed up, down on his luck, who goes to China, discovers the street ball venom, decides to take him back to LA to prep him for the draft. In the announcement this week about Hustle, China was gone. So I don't know if those relations have cooled and China doesn't want anything to do with the NBA or LeBron James or whatever. I really like that idea. I don't want to see Adam Sandler go to Africa, like the air up there, like that Kevin Bacon movie. I don't want to, find me somebody else. Go to Puerto Rico, go to Brazil, friggin' go to Croatia or whatever. But yeah, I really like the idea of China. I think it's a bummer that it seems like that's not going to work out. I think this is a good role for Sandler. He's a huge basketball fan, big Knicks fan. And Jeremiah Zagar, great. I loved We the Animals. If you haven't seen We the Animals, track down that 2018 indie. It was very, very good. It doesn't seem like he's the right guy for this, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with the rest of Jeremiah's work. It just doesn't seem like you go from We the Animals to making an Adam Sandler movie, although I don't think this is a Adam Sandler movie, like we all know. So right, Netflix is doing that. Netflix is doing a Jessica Alba action movie called Trigger Warning, which seems, was ordered kind of right in the immediate wake of Extraction success. Netflix has sort of become the place for these, I don't want to say direct-to-video type action movies, but they are definitely catering to the action audience. I think you can tell that much. The same thing that they did with romantic comedies, which was sort of a genre that the studios had given up on, and then Netflix had, real success making a whole bunch of romantic comedies and appealing to young female audiences. Now they're going after this male audience with these really macho action movies. I think you could even call Spencer Confidential one of those with Mark Wahlberg. Bright is a little bit of a different case. But anyways, I think you're going to be seeing more and more of these types of action movies. Remember that Dave Bautista movie, Final Score, where he's in a soccer stadium with his daughter? That was a direct-to-DVD thing. That's the sort of thing I think Netflix is going to be churning out. With bigger and bigger stars, the way that they got Chris Hemsworth. Look at how that worked out for them. It's their biggest movie ever. Michael B. Jordan doing this old Tom Cruise project, Methuselah. He's been attached to that for a while. Who did they get to direct? What was the actual news on Methuselah? I'm totally blanking. Methuselah. I don't even know. All right, Danny Boyle. That was it. The news was Danny Boyle, and it's so I think what they are thinking in terms of this project. This is not just about an old man. This is about a guy who's survived for 1,000 years, and has come up with some pretty cool survival skills. So what I'm envisioning is some sort of survival thriller and action type movie. Maybe this is sort of Danny Boyle's way of working out those Bond demons. He was supposed to do the James Bond movie. He left due to creative differences because there's no room for experimentation with James Bond. You've got to give the people what they want on that franchise. Methuselah, Warner Brothers apparently sees this as a franchise. Michael B. Jordan as good as anybody to start a franchise with. I like the idea of him working with Danny Boyle. I don't like the title, Methuselah. That doesn't sound particularly exciting, but I could see Danny Boyle cracking this one, figuring out an interesting way into this story, and Michael B. Jordan is obviously a really solid lead. So we'll see how that one comes together. There was a diverse remake of Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. Sure. I mean, I love Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. It seems like a movie very much of its time, although it's exactly the type of movie you could reinvent and get away with, because it's not this unimpeachable classic. I mean, it is to me, but others likely disagree. So I'll be looking forward to that one, seeing who they cast in it, because Sue Ellen, that's a big role. Netflix canceling inactive accounts. Good for them. I hate that when you've signed up for something and then you don't use it, and years later you look at your bank statement and you're like, holy shit, I've been paying for this for 6 years. I think I did that with health insurance at one point. I was paying for health insurance. I got it through work. I was like, how much money did I spend on health insurance the last 3 or 4 years? I didn't even freaking realize. So I'm glad that Netflix is going in there being like, listen, if you haven't watched anything in a year or two, we're just going to cancel your account. What are you still paying for this for? You don't really see companies do that too often, but I like it. And so it'll be interesting to see whether their subscriber count dips next quarter. Saw a couple new trailers this week, The Old Guard and The Last Days of American Crime, both Netflix movies, again, filling that action-y void. With The Last Days of American Crime, Edgar Ramirez stars, and yet it was Michael Pitt who stole the trailer. This is a movie that's set in the future where the government basically puts out this signal, and the signal prevents you from committing a crime, from breaking the law. We know right from wrong, right? When you commit a crime, unless you're insane. I wonder how that would work. I wonder if that's the little loophole in this, that the insane can actually commit crimes because they don't know what's a crime and what's not. They don't know right from wrong. But so, yeah, this is about, this interesting little heist crew that is going to pull off one last job before crime is outlawed in America. You've got Edgar Ramirez, Anna Brewster, Charlotte Copley, and Michael Pitt, who looks awesome. I like his whole character design. He's got this long hair, tattoos. I dig it. I'm looking forward to that one. And then, The Old Guard. That one, it intrigued me. It's not the sort of movie I'd typically be super excited for, but I also like the idea of these warriors fighting in all these different time periods, because they've been been around for thousands of years and they're eternal or whatever. I don't know how differently the Eternals is going to end up being. Charlize Theron, I think Matthias Schoenaerts is in this one. It has an interesting ensemble cast of international actors. And yeah, in lieu of there not being any big summer movies, this is a movie I'm looking forward to. Last Days of American Crime. These are movies that now become a little bit more eventized because there's nothing else. There's no competition. Issa Lopez directing a Blumhouse movie. I need to see her movie Tigers Are Not Afraid. I've heard enough good things about that. It's time for me to just man up and check that one out. We got new images from Josh Boone's The Stand. I think those were in Vanity Fair. I'm really looking forward to The Stand. It's also about a pandemic that it is much deadlier, obviously. It wipes out most of the human race. I loved The Stand miniseries as a kid, even though I probably barely understood what the hell I was watching. I was probably 10 or 11 years old when it came out. I dig the cast Boone has assembled here. Sign me up. This could not be coming at a more perfect time. Peter Dinklage and Jason Momoa doing a Van Helsing movie, The Good, Bad, and Undead, where I think Peter Dinklage is going to be playing Van Helsing. That's kind of cool. I like the big and little vibe. I wish those guys were making a twins movie or something. But yeah, it sounds fun. Sex, Lies, and Videotape. Steven Soderbergh writing, or I think he's finished writing a sequel. It sounds like that movie could actually happen. I mean, you can never say never when it comes to Soderbergh because he's so, he's such an ingenue. He's just so creative. He can make anything happen. I think I saw Sex, Lies, and Videotape when I was a teenager. I was probably too young for it. I should probably revisit that one as well. It was obviously one of the biggest, paved the way for indie movies back at Sundance, I think in the late 80s or early 90s. I forget which year it actually was, 89 or 90 or 91. But he's been talking about this for 15 years. that this thing has been in the works now that it's finally done. And all these stars are pretty much still around and still doing really strong work. So, like Sex Lies and Videotape, there's a lot more that you could say about that in the year 2020. Some interesting like Pixar defections, and I mean, like, you know, Andrew Stanton is doing this movie Chairman Space. Who was it? Right, Josh Cooley, the Toy Story 4 director, is doing this project Malamander. Like Pixar, and they've already lost John Lasseter, and good riddance to him. That guy was a scumbag. But it's like they're bleeding a lot of talent over there. And I think that they really need to sort of. These are a lot of smart people. Maybe they resent sort of being part of the Pixar team, part of the brain trust, and they want to, you know, get their own names out there a little bit more. And also just do some things outside of animation or whatever. But I don't know. It just seems like Pixar is really losing a lot of talent lately, and these guys are in high demand all over. Like, if you've spent time in the Pixar trenches, like every other animation studio is going to jump sorry, I don't know what the hell I'm saying. Jump to work with you. I love that there was no mention of John Carter though in Deadline's Andrew Stanton article. I did see that in Richard Rushfield's newsletter, The Ankler, which you should all be subscribing to. I mean, listen, as a trade reporter, we get to pick and choose which credits we want to highlight. And obviously, John Carter is not a particularly flattering one. It's one of the biggest bombs of all time. But yeah, it just seems like, how do you write this story about Andrew Stanton without mentioning that movie? It just seems disingenuous. A couple of big moves, you know, away from theaters. Sony sold its Tom Hanks movie Greyhound, it's a World War II movie, to Apple TV+. We have no idea when we're going to see it, if Apple TV is going to put this thing out in the middle of summer. It seems like they would and should. Or I don't know if they're going to wait until later in the year for an awards run, although who even knows if there's going to be an award season this year. You know, I think a lot of that really depends on the fall festivals. We still haven't gotten word about Toronto or Venice or any of those things. Apple shelled out $70 million for this Greyhound movie. You know, I'd always thought it was sort of like a minor release. It's from, I think it's Aaron Schneider, who did Get Low, you know, much bigger in scope than that film. And it's really just Hanks. Like, I don't know how much, if there's like a big co-star or anything. It doesn't have like a big all-star cast, I don't think. So I'd always sort of thought of it as like this minor Sony movie. And then the trailer came out, and I was like, actually, this looks pretty good. I was pretty excited for it based on that trailer. But I wonder if Sony's just like, yeah, these kinds of movies, you're not going to get a Saving Private Ryan gross on this. Like, you're going to be lucky to make $50 million at the box office. And even then, that's with like a wide release marketing campaign. Plus, you got to split that with theater owners. So with Apple coming in offering $70 million, I don't know how much this movie cost, whether it was 30, 40, 50. Let's say it was 40 or 50, right? It's a World War II movie. There's effects. You got to pay Tom Hanks' salary. Then, you know, they'd spent a little on marketing, obviously, but not too much. Let's say that the spend at this point was just 10 or 15. So maybe you're in for 55, 60 million at this point. If Apple's coming to you with a $70 million check, you take it, right? I mean, as long as it's 8 to 10 million more than what it cost, seems like a good deal, because otherwise it's probably just going to end up being a money loser for the studio. So unless you think you're going to win an Oscar for it, and again, who knows if there's going to be Oscars this year? Yeah, if you're mezzo on it, and the movie's like a 2.5 star out of 4 film, give it to Apple, and Apple will be delighted to have it too, and they'll put money into it because it's like, hey, we've got Tom Hanks on the service now. The other movie is Jon Stewart's Irresistible with Steve Carell and Rose Byrne. That was just announced this morning, moving to VOD on June 26th. Again, Universal is certainly out in front in terms of like, just put this movie on VOD. You know, Irresistible was never going to break the bank. It would have been lucky to gross $20-25 million, quite frankly. Steve Carell has not been a big box office guy. Like Universal also put out Welcome to Marwen, so they know that all too well. And it's just, people are tired of politics, and this is a movie about politics in an election year. We've got enough of that stuff. And the trailer did not really look very good either. So not surprised that Focus is dumping this on VOD on June 26th. Whew. Timothy Olyphant joining The Mandalorian. That's an interesting story. Really like Olyphant. Again, don't know if he's even going to have lines or if he's just going to be a guy in a mask who takes off his mask and, oh my God, it's Timothy Olyphant the whole time. Again, Pedro Pascal maybe spent a day or two on the set of The Mandalorian. You know, that's not him walking around in the suit the whole time. So we know so much about The Mandalorian. There was a whole convoluted thing, too, about who Timothy Olyphant's playing in here. I don't even care. I don't even care to rehash it. Give me some surprise. This is the one Star Wars thing I can actually support and be a fan of. I want to be surprised. I don't need to know everything going in. Netflix released the first music video for its Will Ferrell thing, Eurovision, with Rachel McAdams. She seems way too good for this kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe it'll surprise. Blumhouse is planning to go into production on some movie in just a few weeks. Again, is this actual production where people are on a set in a soundstage or on location, or are we just talking about production on some Zoom movie, that's going to be Unfriended? Because it's just totally different things, and I love how there's no clarity about that in the announcement. Colin Farrell came out and said he's got a few tasty scenes in Batman as the Penguin. I mean, it got me excited for it, but it basically just confirmed what I'd said all along, is that Riddler is going to be the main villain in this movie. There are, obviously the Penguin is part of it, and there may even be others, but this is the Riddler story. Die Hard 3 celebrated an anniversary this week. I actually watched it. I had a rough week personally and just needed to check out for a couple of hours. And you know what? The movie worked. I did not think about my problems while I watched Die Hard with a Vengeance. I would love to see Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson get back together again, whether it's for another installment in that franchise, which has totally gone to shit since that film, or whether they just team up on something else. Charlie Hunnam reteaming with Max Winkler on a project called Denali. It's, it's a rescue dog movie. How many dog movies do we need? It's just, we're not getting enough of dogs being stuck in our homes. Channing Tatum's making a movie called Dog. All these dog movies are the same. Make a dog movie that's different, and I will be there. I'm a big dog lover, but I feel like these movies all follow the same fucking template. Clarice, The Silence of the Lambs show, will debut mid-season on CBS. I am looking forward to this show, and yet at the same time, dread it with every fiber of my being, because it's on CBS, and God knows the kinds of shows they make. Got a new clip from Becky on Collider.com, so check that out. That is the Kevin James Nazi movie. I watched that last week. I'm still embargoed. Can't say too much about it, but what I can tell you as a reporter is that the initial cut of this movie that was submitted to the MPAA came back with an NC-17. NC-17. It is violent. It is gory. It is insane. And if you want a little taste of it, go to Collider.com. Check out the clip from Becky. We also did Michael Mann rankings. Disagreed with this list. Black Hat is the worst thing Michael Mann has done. Worse than Public Enemies. Yeah, it was an interesting ranking of things. I thought Manhunter was way too low. I love Manhunter. That should be higher. But I think it pretty much got the first three right. Heat, Insider, and Collateral. It wasn't in that order. You're going to have to go to the site to check out what the actual order was, but I think that those are probably the three best Michael Mann movies. We also got a trailer this week for Force of Nature, which pits industry pariahs, in a sense, Mel Gibson and Emile Hirsch in a movie where Emile Hirsch is evacuating an apartment building because there's a hurricane, and Mel Gibson's the grumpy old man who's refusing to leave his home, and then there's some bad guys who are busting into this apartment complex because there's $55 million hidden on the grounds, and so Gibson and Hirsch have to take on the bad guys in the middle of a hurricane. I dig movies like this. I dig Emile and Mel Gibson, even though Mel Gibson's a raging anti-Semite, and Emile has had his own problems with the law, as outlined in my article. Emile Hirsch, unblock me, by the way. You and Scott Wampler. I'm blocked by both of you. I don't like it. I don't like the feeling. I like both of you guys. Unblock me. Scott Wampler, if someone watching this is listening to this, fucking tweet at Scott and tell him to unblock me. This is bullshit. Couple of other things before we wrap up the show. Right, Mission Impossible 7. Nick Holt leaving. He was going to be the villain. He apparently has some sort of scheduling conflict. These movies are months-long shoots. I know that they delayed. I don't know. Does he have to go back for season 2 of The Great or something? I just don't know what the conflict could be. Someone was saying today, I think it was either Poland or Tapley. I forget again. I always confuse these guys. I think it was Poland. It was like, did Tom Cruise realize that Nick Holt is better looking and more charismatic, not to mention a whole lot taller, and so they had to get rid of him? What? I mean, Nick Holt looks just like Ed Skrein. Like, he's a good-looking guy, better looking than me. I don't think he's like, gorgeous or anything. Tom Cruise still looks fucking great. Like, and Nick Holt being more charismatic than Tom Cruise. You fucking insane, David Poland? Get the hell out of here. I don't think that had anything to do with it. And I like Isai Morales. Isai Morales, by the way, great-looking guy. He's like, I don't know how old he is. He's maybe 57-year-old Latino. Do I think he's a big enough actor to be playing the villain in a Mission Impossible movie? No, not necessarily, but neither was Sean Harris. He was just a really good character actor who's worked beautifully the last couple of movies. Isai Morales is a fucking great-looking dude, but I don't think it's about Tom Cruise not wanting to share the spotlight with someone who's better looking than him. Like, again, you're right. Like, I don't understand how Isai Morales is a replacement for Nick Holt unless you've totally, rewritten the script, and maybe they have, because Mission Impossible 7 was supposed to be shooting in Italy. Maybe Nick Holt was playing an Italian. Maybe they can't, maybe they got to move the action away from Italy. Maybe they're moving it, somewhere else where Isai Morales is a better fit for it. Either way, I'm fine with that swap. It's the star power isn't quite the same, but he's a good actor, Isai Morales. Really loved him in Bad Boys, and I'm talking about the Sean Penn movie. Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish launched a production company this week called Complete Fiction with Nira Park and Rachel Pryor. They set up 3 TV projects at Netflix right off the bat. One of them is an adaptation of Lockwood & Co. That was the only project I'd sort of heard. I've seen those books from time to time. I haven't read any of them. It seems like it could be a hit for Netflix, and I really like Edgar Wright and Joe Cornish, although I have to say, probably more of a Joe Cornish guy, to be honest. And you know what? We're going to wrap up the show with some good news. Except it's not. It's I don't really know what this news is. John Krasinski sold his format, Some Good News, to Viacom CBS. And you should have seen the quotes from John Krasinski and all these executives, how excited they were to get their hands on this. Like, you don't need John Krasinski to be reporting good news. And in fact, John Krasinski is not even going to host the show. So what did you buy exactly? Meanwhile, does everything need to be bought and sold? Like, John Krasinski started this as a very noble, nice thing to do from his house with his daughters or whatever. I didn't even watch an episode, to be honest. It went viral. People have really liked it. It's a ray of light, a ray of hope in an otherwise dark time. Now we gotta fucking make money off of it and package it and give it to fucking CBS Viacom. Like, you're mad. It's like you're John Krasinski. You can live off office residuals for the rest of your life. You're married to Emily Blunt, who's a gigantic movie star. What do you need this money for? Why does anybody even need to? What is this format without John Krasinski? You need him to make some calls to get more office cameos on there. You need a Krasinski cameo in every other episode. Someone did a great piece on Medium today making fun of the whole thing. There's an oral history of it, and I laughed my ass off. Like, is it that easy to be a Hollywood executive where you just have to, like, see something like that and go, I like that. I want to buy it, and now I look successful because now we have this property and I look like I did my job. Like, man, it just must – I'm not saying it's easy to be a Hollywood executive, but it doesn't seem that hard. People could probably say that about my job, too. It doesn't seem that hard to be a movie blogger. I think that'll do it this week. I think, that was a lot of headlines, guys. A lot of information coming at you. I got to get back to work. I hope you guys enjoy, your summer. I'm going to be here with the fam in Boston. Make sure to send me questions next week. I can't imagine that next week will be as busy as this week was. So we'll bring back the mailbag. I'll answer some questions. In the meantime, hit me up on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can find me everywhere, but definitely find me on Cameo because that's where I get paid. I can record a fun little message for you, let you know about maybe a rumor or two that I'm hearing. Who knows? It's all up. It's all on the table with the Snyder Cut. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Make sure to follow my byline at Collider.com, and we will see you next Friday on the Snyder Cut.